Alfonso Cajero, A Journey into Finance History. Chapter 64, Massive Global Stimulus Measures, 2020. Governments worldwide enacted fiscal stimulus to counteract economic slowdowns caused by COVID-19. In the early months of 2020, an invisible enemy crept across borders, heedless of human constructs like nations and economies. The novel coronavirus, known as COVID-19, began its assault in the city of Wuhan, China. Initially, the world watched with a mix of concern and curiosity as reports of a mysterious illness surfaced. But soon, this distant specter turned into a global nightmare. Lockdowns became the new norm as governments worldwide scrambled to contain the spread of the virus. Schools, offices, and public spaces emptied out, transforming bustling metropolises into ghost towns. The economic repercussions were immediate and severe. Businesses shuttered, unemployment skyrocketed, and stock markets plunged. In the midst of this turmoil, leaders from around the world convened, albeit virtually, to devise a strategy to combat not just the virus, but the economic catastrophe it brought in its wake. This unprecedented crisis called for unprecedented measures. In Washington, D.C., the halls of power buzzed with frantic energy. President Donald Trump and his team, recognizing the urgency, prepared to roll out the largest economic stimulus package in American history. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security (CARES Act was swiftly drafted, aiming to inject $2.2 trillion into the beleaguered economy. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, European leaders grappled with their own response. The European Central Bank, ECB, under Christine Lagarde, unleashed a $750 billion Pandemic Emergency Purchase Program, PEP. Germany, often cautious with fiscal spending, broke from tradition, announcing a massive $1.1 trillion aid package to support businesses and workers. In Asia, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe unveiled a record $1 trillion stimulus, while South Korea committed to a $200 billion package. The message was clear. The world was mobilizing its financial might to stave off economic collapse. In the United States, the CARES Act was more than just a number on a balance sheet. It was a lifeline. As the virus spread and lockdowns intensified, millions of Americans faced an uncertain future. Jobless claims surged to unprecedented levels, and the lines at food banks stretched for miles. The stimulus package aimed to cushion the blow. Direct payments to individuals, enhanced unemployment benefits, and forgivable loans for small businesses were just a few of the measures included. Hospitals received much-needed funds to tackle the health crisis, and states were granted aid to manage the increased demand for services. The rollout was not without its challenges. The sheer scale of the operation meant that delays and glitches were inevitable. Yet, despite the hurdles, the impact was palpable. Families facing eviction were granted a reprieve, and small businesses on the brink of bankruptcy found a temporary lifeline. In Europe, the pandemic exposed both the strengths and weaknesses of the European Union. Initially, the response was fragmented, with each country fending for itself. Italy, the first European epicenter, found itself overwhelmed, pleading for assistance. Gradually, the realization dawned that a united response was imperative. The European Commission, led by Ursula von der Leyen, proposed a $750 billion recovery fund, dubbed Next Generation EU. This plan, funded by common debt, a first for the EU, aimed to support member states hardest hit by the pandemic. Germany and France, traditionally the economic powerhouses of the EU, put aside their differences to champion this initiative. Their cooperation signaled a new era of European solidarity, reinforcing the notion that unity was the key to overcoming this crisis. In Asia, the approach varied from country to country, reflecting the region's diverse economic landscapes. Japan's stimulus package, the largest in its history, aimed to support both businesses and households. The government provided cash handouts, deferred tax payments, and offered zero-interest loans to struggling companies. China, where the virus first emerged, showcased its resilience. The Chinese government injected billions into the economy, focusing on infrastructure projects and direct aid to businesses. Their swift and decisive measures helped stabilize the economy, allowing China to be one of the first major economies to return to growth. South Korea's strategy focused on maintaining employment and supporting small businesses. The government provided emergency relief funds to households and subsidies to keep workers on payrolls. Their aggressive testing and contact tracing efforts also played a crucial role in controlling the virus's spread, enabling a quicker economic recovery. One of the most remarkable aspects of the global stimulus measures was the degree of international collaboration. Central banks around the world, including the Federal Reserve, the ECB, the Bank of Japan, and others, coordinated their efforts to ensure liquidity and stability in global financial markets. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank also stepped in, providing financial assistance to the most vulnerable countries. Emergency loans and debt relief measures were implemented to help nations with weaker economies navigate the crisis. This spirit of cooperation extended beyond financial aid. Scientists and researchers from across the globe collaborated on developing vaccines and treatments for COVID-19. The sharing of data and resources accelerated the pace of medical breakthroughs, underscoring the power of collective action in the face of a common enemy. Behind the staggering numbers and economic jargon lay the human stories, the lives disrupted, and the resilience demonstrated. Families learned to navigate a new normal, juggling remote work and virtual schooling. Communities rallied together, supporting one another through acts of kindness and solidarity. Healthcare workers, often hailed as heroes, bore the brunt of the crisis. Their tireless efforts saved countless lives, even as they faced unimaginable challenges and personal risks. The stimulus measures aimed to support these frontline workers, providing them with the resources and protection they needed to continue their vital work. Small business owners, who saw their livelihoods threatened, found ways to adapt. Restaurants shifted to delivery and takeout models, while retail stores pivoted to online sales. Innovation and ingenuity became the cornerstones of survival, highlighting the indomitable spirit of entrepreneurs. The global stimulus measures had far-reaching effects, extending beyond immediate economic relief. They prompted a re-evaluation of economic policies and priorities, sparking discussions on topics like universal basic income, healthcare access, and the role of government in times of crisis. The environmental impact of the pandemic also became a point of focus. With industries shut down and travel restricted, air quality improved and carbon emissions dropped. This temporary respite for the planet led to renewed calls for sustainable development and green recovery plans. Governments began to recognize the importance of resilience, not just in terms of economic stability, but also in public health, infrastructure, and social systems. The lessons learned from the pandemic would shape future policies and preparedness strategies, ensuring that the world would be better equipped to handle future crises. As 2020 drew to a close, the first signs of recovery began to emerge. Vaccination campaigns, buoyed by unprecedented scientific collaboration, offered a glimmer of hope. The distribution of vaccines became a priority, with governments working tirelessly to ensure that every citizen had access. Economic indicators showed gradual improvement, businesses started reopening, and consumer confidence began to rise. The global economy, while still fragile, was on the mend. The massive stimulus measures had laid the groundwork for recovery, providing the necessary support to weather the storm. Yet, the journey was far from over. The pandemic had exposed deep-seated inequalities and systemic vulnerabilities. Addressing these issues would require sustained effort and commitment from all sectors of society. The global community had to remain vigilant and proactive, fostering an environment of cooperation and mutual support. The COVID-19 pandemic served as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of the modern world. No country, no matter how powerful or wealthy, was immune to its effects. The virus transcended borders, highlighting the need for global cooperation and solidarity. The stimulus measures, while crucial in the immediate response, also underscored the importance of preparedness and resilience. Investing in healthcare infrastructure, ensuring social safety nets, and fostering economic stability became paramount. The lessons learned from this crisis would shape policies and strategies for generations to come. Communities, having endured the hardships together, emerged stronger and more united. The acts of kindness, the stories of perseverance, and the collective efforts to support one another became the defining narratives of this era. Humanity had faced one of its greatest challenges, and through collaboration and resilience, had begun to emerge victorious. The global response to the COVID-19 pandemic catalyzed a shift in economic thinking. The crisis exposed the limitations of existing models and sparked a re-evaluation of economic priorities. Concepts like universal basic income, wealth redistribution, and sustainable development gained traction as policymakers sought to create a more equitable and resilient future. Governments around the world began to explore new approaches to economic policy. The emphasis shifted from austerity measures to proactive investment in public goods and services. Healthcare, education, and social safety nets received increased funding, reflecting a commitment to building a more inclusive and sustainable society.